Fortis and I are out to dinner one night, and I'm just become president of the company. I said to him, Peter, I got to ask you a question. Why did you hire me to run Magic? I mean, now Magic's very successful. It's doing well, making lots of money. And he said to me, oh, that's simple. He said, well, I thought you were a smart kid. And I always figured that if it didn't work out in 6 months, I'd just fire you. And you could always go back to be a sales manager because you're really good at that. So I said, you were young enough. I thought, what the hell? I'll take a shot.
Bounce back.
Benztown president Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My next guest was cited as one of the most powerful people in radio by Radio Inc. for 10 years in a row. In 2018, they bestowed him a Lifetime Achievement Award. He was named a giant at broadcasting by the Library of American Broadcasting Foundation. He was also the recipient of the prestigious Golden Mike Service Award by the Broadcasters Foundation of America. And in 2017, he was inducted into the Massachusetts Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Please welcome Peter Smyth. Peter, it is so great to have you.
Chachi, it's been an honor to be on your program, and it's great to see you. How are you?
It's so good to see you. And I have a special guest on this episode of this podcast. He's the only person who's been on the podcast twice. He's a legend in his own right and one of your dearest friends. I've got Jeff Smulyan joining us, the very famous CEO of MS Communications and a very recent author who just wrote a fantastic book called Never Ride a Roller Coaster Upside Down. So please welcome Jeff as well.
Well, Jeff is one of my dearest friends in the world, one of my closest friends, and I'm honored that he's even here. And for everybody who's listening to this, I recommend the book highly. I get 10 cents a copy, so please go out and buy it. We would appreciate it greatly. But to have Jeff on a podcast with you is, I can't talk about a greater friend than Jeff Smulyan.
How did the two of you first meet?
We were actually, I think, arrested at a broadcast convention. I think we both shared a jail cell. No, Peter, I don't know how we met. I mean, it's been 40 years. I can't remember what happened.
It's been 40 years since we've been together.
Yeah.
40 great years.
Yeah.
And you know what? Jeff has been a guiding light to me, a big brother to me the whole time, not much older, but a big brother to me and very kind. And when I ever needed advice on anything, I'd call Jeff, and I knew that I'd get the straight answer, right or wrong. Even if I didn't want to hear it, I'd hear it. If you're Jeff Smulyan's friend, you're a friend for life. And I am honored to be in that circle.
Well, that's mutual. I mean, Peter and I obviously adore Peter, one of the great people of all time. And we have been friends for an awfully long time, and I love him dearly.
How did you guys ever compete against each other? MS and Greater Meteor, were you guys in the same market at any time?
We bought a station from you guys. We bought 96.9 in Boston.
Yeah. I don't think so. Probably, if we had actually ever competed, we probably would never speak. We would have hated it. I don't know.
Religiously.
Yeah.
No, we never competed in a radio market, but we've been competitive in golf.
Oh, yeah. The important things.
Yeah, that's very important. And I still have Jeff's putter.
Oh, that's right. My chipper, you do, for like 3 years ago. It's the reason I can't.
See what I brought up?
It's a chipper. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's funny, but we've worked together on so many things. And you know what's funny in the industry? You're close to people, whether you're competing with them or not, because you forget about that instantly. And so, like, I don't remember if we've competed in markets, but somebody once said your closest friends are the people you compete with every day because they should be, because you have the most in common with them. You live the same life. So.
That's actually a great piece of advice. What would you, both of you icons in the business and have obviously just had so many different success stories amongst yourselves, what would you guys kind of share with the wisdom that you have on some of the modern leadership and some of the modern, some of the current problems that the industry as a whole is facing?
Peter, I'll let you start. This is your show. I'm just jumping in.
I would say in today's media environment, I think that, there's a lot of headwinds out there. I think that we're going through this creative destructiveness in the technology field where you're seeing all different types of distribution be introduced between the streaming and all the other different things that are going on. And I think that radio has to be more innovative. And I have to think it has to go back to its roots. It has to be a local business. That's basically what the strength of it is, live and local and personality driven. And it's difficult when you have this kind of leverage in a sector. It's very difficult to do it. And one thing that I was fortunate when I ran Greater Media, that we weren't over leveraged and we were able to deliver on quality talent. And we were also able to deliver on the communities that we served, because we always looked at a radio license as a privilege and not a right. And we always looked at the fact that we had to give back to the communities that we served. And I also think that you have to recruit great people into this business. And I don't know if we're getting those great ideas coming into the business. People can say, how do you deal in this digital world? Sometimes I worry about that. I mean, I think there are good operators out there. I think Hubbard Broadcasting is an outstanding company, and I think they do a great job. And I just think that these are very challenging days. And it takes innovation, and it takes intestinal fortitude, and it takes putting the investments in the right places. And sometimes I wonder if the allocation of resources are really going to the proper places.
That's. Would you concur with that, Jeff?
Yeah, I would. I think programming has to matter to people, and it matters when you've got compelling personalities. It matters when you're totally involved in your community. I think those are the most important things. And Peter's exactly right. When there's so much debt that you have to cut costs, cut people, kind of nationalize programming, run 16, 18 minutes of units of commercials an hour, it makes it a very tough business. It's very, very tough to resonate with listeners when you do things that really don't find compelling.
Can some of the companies that are very heavily over-levered right now, can they dig themselves out, or will it be a situation where you think that there's going to be further bankruptcies down the road?
I think it's very tough. I think it's going to require some good luck. It's going to require some tailwinds in terms of industry billings. Listen, I've been there. We were very fortunate, but it is a very tough hand to play.
Yeah, I would agree with what Jeff said. I think that it's going to be difficult, but I think that depending on how the economy goes, interest rates, the maturity of debt in different companies, I think it'll be hard, but, not impossible, but I think it'll be a challenging next 18 to 24 months. And I think we've all faced challenging, 08, 09 was very challenging. The economy went to hell in a handbasket. Companies were getting, covenants were getting tighter. Banks were getting tighter. But I think the cool thing, you have to keep your head, and you have to make sure that you've got to live to fight another day. And you also have to remember that the most important thing you have on your balance sheet are the people. And you have to treat the people with the same way that you want to be treated. And I think that's very important.
That's so incredibly well put. And the two of you, I hear nothing but just terrific things. Peter, you and I have not spent much time together. Jeff and I have been fortunate. I know Jeff better. Actually, I met you through Jeff. We sat next to each other.
That's right. We sat next to each other.
Radio Inc. Forecast.
Radio Inc.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm on the board of the Library of American Broadcasting Foundation, and one of your former employees, Heidi Raphael, is the chair of that board. And so we spoke a bit about you. And
she's outstanding.
She just absolutely adores you. Tell me a little bit, because I think it's so great. I know you both were at competing companies, and it sounds like you bought one market for one station, Peter, from Jeff, but you guys would really kind of rely on each other to kind of help each other with some counsel. And give me an example of what you would call Jeff for, Pete.
For example, when I couldn't tee a ball no.
I hear that's still a problem.
Yeah, it's still a problem. Trust me. There's so many of them I can't even count on my hands, but one that is very pressing. I went to Jeff during the financial crises that we were all going through, and I was worried myself about how to get through it and what I should do and how to stay the course and how you get through, different situations with banks and different things like that. Even though Greater Media was not a highly leveraged company, it was privately held, but there were still internal challenges and external challenges. And what was the other side of this horizon going to be like? And Jeff was the first guy I called. Who do you turn to when you're nervous in front of all your people that you're working with you? You don't want to show a sign of weakness. And Jeff was the guy that I went to, and I told him I was scared. I was scared was what was going to happen and what should I do? And he said to me, "You're a smart guy. You know what you're doing, and you just have to stay focused. And when you get worried, call me. We'll just talk it out." And I knew there was always somebody that I could go to when things were wrong and when I could celebrate victories, or when I was putting a new format on the air, or when I was going to try something that was totally out of the box. He'd either say to me, "You're insane," or I told him at some point I wanted to re-enter the radio business, and he told me if I ever did it, he'd come to my house with a baton and put it through my heart. That's an exact quote. That's not an exaggeration.
I think it was a poker. It was a poker somewhere else, but it's the same general idea.
I'm trying. I understand this is a G-rated show, so I'm just trying to keep the language clean. I was offered an opportunity to go run a company, and I went to call him and talk to him about it. And he said to me, "You ever do that, and I'll do X amount of things to you." So you just keep doing what you're doing on the philanthropy end, and you'll be fine. And and even in life issues, family, kids, anything, I would go to Jeff. I spent a weekend out at his house with his family, and we went to the basketball game together, and spent time with Heather and Sam. And you know what? Jeff is probably one of the most natural people you ever met, but he's also has one of the best ears that you've ever in guidance. And he was just an honest friend. I knew that anything I said to him wasn't going to change his opinion of me. And that's rarity. You find that in life.
And that's mutual. I think you talked about culture. Peter and I probably bonded over culture because I think I'm proud of the fact I think we treat people the same way. We view people the same way. And I could still remember sitting at my counter when I had a real crisis, and I picked up the phone. I'll never forget one night and called Peter and said, "I don't know what to do here." So it's mutual, it's friendship, it's respect. At the end of the day, I think your friends matter more than anything. It's the relationships you have.
I am so grateful for both of you sharing this. I can tell you from, the outside looking in, both of you are just so revered as incredible CEOs with just amazing ethics. But the fact that you guys are vulnerable and you reach out to each other and you have someone there to help you is honestly something I'm just now learning by hearing you two talk about that, because I could only imagine the stress that you were enduring during the financial crisis and trying to do the best you could to lead your respective companies through that and making sure the bills were paid. And in some ways, I'm assuming you guys are almost like therapists to each other.
Yeah.
Still are.
Yeah, it's true. And by the way, if you want to see really bad therapy, play golf with us one day.
Yeah.
I would love for that. I know you make your way out here quite a bit, Jeff, because you're on the board of USC. And your daughter lives out here as well, correct, Jeff?
My oldest lives there, yes. Yeah. My youngest is now cavorting around New York, but goes to school at Georgetown. And my middle is here with my grandchildren. So the Smulyan family is now coast to coast.
And Peter, do you make your way out to LA often?
I don't get there as much as I used to, but I do have a daughter who lives out there. So I do try to get out there every couple of months. So I would love to get together with you. I
would love to. I'd love to go to play golf with both of you. Would be just absolutely incredible. And maybe Jeff would finally get his chipper back.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's not rush into that.
The third anniversary of this is my chipper. Yeah.
We could do one. We'll play on one of our trips out there together, and we'll make it. We'll have a golf game.
That would be great.
I would love that.
That would be great. We'd really like that.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to share about Peter?
Peter's the best. And, Peter, I will see you in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
And all is good. Chachi, it's always a pleasure. I don't want to hog any more of this interview.
This has been so incredible. Thank you, Jeff, for jumping on, and really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to interviewing Peter.
Thanks.
Thank
guys.
you, Jeff.
Thanks
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye.
See you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
All right, Peter, you got us?
That was great. That was great. Thank you very much for doing that.
So happy to do it. We were talking on Friday, and he mentioned how you guys are so close. And to me, that really, I can tell you, I run a much smaller company than what both of you have run, but just the stress, and sometimes it's very lonely at the top. And
It is.
I think that's such an incredibly cool story, and I think it's neat to know that you guys were there to, and still are today, to support each other and to just help get through all the different things that you faced.
I'll tell you one more quick story, and then we can go back. When Jeff and I served on a committee together, where a group of radio executives would get together to talk about the RAB and what was going on, and at that time I was running the RAB. And my term was expiring, and we were leaving the room, and Jeff said to me, "I have to tell you something." I said, "Yeah, what's that?" He said, "Well, you're going to do another year at the RAB." I said, "Well, he said, your term is not up. Your term runs up next year, so you're going to serve another year, okay?" I said, "Whatever you say, Jeff." True story.
It's like the Don. You don't want to upset him.
Don't upset him.
Peter, tell me a little bit about growing up. You're based in Boston now. Are you from the East Coast?
I am originally from New York.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Tarrytown, New York. We lived right outside of Manhattan. My dad was a Wall Street banker, so growing up as a kid, he said to me, "Do whatever you want as long as you become a banker." But I always had a fascination with radio. I just always loved it. And I used to have a little transistor that I'd keep under my pillow, and I'd listen to all those great stations, WOR in New York and WABC and MCA. And then, I'd hear in Chicago, the crack of the bat out there. And I'd listen to just, SM in Nashville, and listen to great country music, because these were all great signals.
Sure.
And I just fell in love. I just saw it as the theater of the mind, and I just enjoyed the trips, and I got to journey all around the country listening to my little radio. And so it was kind of a traveler for me. It was kind of and as I grew up and went on through school, I didn't have a typical broadcast background. I'd gone to school really for business. I went to Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. And then I went back, and I was a marketing financial analyst for the Nestle company in New York.
Okay. I saw that, and thank you very much to Cosmo, who put together a lot of great info about you. So you really did then, at the beginning, kind of follow in your father's footsteps and got...
Yeah, well, I didn't go to Wall Street. My dad was a Wall Street banker. I kind of did, but I still had a fascination with radio. I loved it. And I went through their management training program, and I was a marketing financial analyst for one of the vice presidents. And so I'd be running numbers and P&Ls and I was going to business school at night. So I was on an entirely different track than going into the radio business.
Yeah, and when you're at Nestle, are you running like P&Ls for different product divisions of theirs?
Yeah, I'm running it for we'd be doing Nescafe.
Okay.
Lipton, the teas and everything, and chocolate, and it was just a fascinating experience because it taught me how to read profit and loss statements. It just taught me how I would go out to the stores and see how many facings they had in the marketplace, how they were doing, how the distribution was processed, the factories were processed, how the whole system worked. And it was just a different background.
Sure. And I suspect you had to be really good at what you did to get hired by a company such as Nestle at such an early age. Yeah. Yeah,
I was pretty young. And it's probably 2 years into it. Yeah, 2.5 years into it, when I finished their training program, they said to me, "We'd like to send you to the International School of Business in Europe. And then after that, we'd like you to go to Asia and work on a product manager project down there for us." And I'm thinking to myself, this is really fascinating, but I really want to go in the radio business. And I just have this incredible desire. So I tried to go around New York looking for a job, and it was very hard. I couldn't find anything.
In radio?
In radio, I couldn't get a job. And I remember I interviewed with a guy at CBS, and he said to me, "Somebody wants to hire you. You've just got to find them." And I thought, that's a brilliant statement, pal. But in hindsight, it was probably the smartest thing I heard, because basically he told me not to give up. Well, the long and short of it is I got a job as a retail salesman with RKO in Boston, Massachusetts. And I thought, I'm going to go do this. So I go to have lunch with my father, and I said to him, "Listen, I've got this opportunity." He said, "Yeah, I know. You're going to go on to business school in Europe, and I think this is good for you." I said, no. I'm going to go sell retail advertising time in Boston, Massachusetts for RKO General. I thought his head was going to blow up. Poor guy's cigar dropped in his soup. He looked at me like, are you out of your mind? And everybody I talked to at Nestle said to me, what's the matter with you?
Yeah, it sounds like you're on the fast track. They want to send you to...
everything was couldn't go better. I was making, good money for a young guy in his 20s, and I was learning a great deal. I was getting a great education in this, and they were paying for my school at night, and figured, but I got to find my passion. And if I'm wrong, then that's okay. But I believed that, if I worked hard and I applied the skills that I learned, that I could be successful at this. And what I found is I went to Boston. I did do it. I started as a retail salesman, I had a $100 a week draw against commission. One month I made $57, and McDonald's was looking good.
At this point, had you ever been on a sales call or done any sort of sales?
I'd never been in a radio station, no. I didn't have a clue.
Did they give you any sort of training or any help, or just threw you the phone book?
The RKO had a great book
that
they made you read, which I thought was pretty good. But what I found I could do, which was different than everybody else, is that I could sit down with the owner of a packaged goods store or a retail store. I could talk to them about their inventory and their turnover rates and slotting allowances and the distribution and how they could do better deals than this. And the guy'd say to me, you're supposed to be in here talking about the station. and I'd say to him, I totally understand that, but I'm just trying to give you the perspective of how this medium can be a good distribution channel to get and help you at the same time improve your floor plan, talk about your financing, talk about your inventory control.
I love that. So you're passing all the knowledge on that you'd learned at Nestle. So you kind of really helped them on two levels.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to bring this new, to me, I thought I could really, satisfy that customer need. I could do a needs analysis of the place, and then I could sit down and intelligently discuss their business with them versus talk about my business. And once I got their trust that they believed I knew what I was talking about, then I tried to sell them on the radio station. And in the beginning, it was kind of, the radio part was kind of a little hazy, but, I made up for it in the other aspects of it.
What a great pitch. I would imagine that hardly anyone had ever heard that before, to have that kind of background. Yeah.
I was different. I was totally different. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. I had a great time. Eventually, I become the sales manager at the station in Boston.
Yeah, and if I'm reading this right, I mean, you really, obviously, your career took off quickly at Nestle, and they saw some fantastic things in you. But then it looks like you were an AE for about a year and a half, and then they make you GSM. So you have some. Yeah, that's impressive in a major market.
Yes, I was the general sales manager of 98.5 WROR. And I was pretty young at it.
And what was that like? I mean, here you've got to be, I'm guessing, your mid-20s at this point?
Oh, yeah, because when I got to OR, I was 29.
So it's got to be pretty challenging. You're managing account executives that I'm sure are maybe twice your age.
Had a hell of a lot more selling time than I did.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I brought to them was that I had a different idea of how to sell time. And I had a different idea of how to price inventory. And I understood demand curves. And I understood a lot of different ways to show them how to talk to a car dealer about his floor plan and how much inventory they should carry. And I taught them how to, if you walk into a supermarket, count the amount of cash registers that are going and multiply it by 7, and you can find out what the annual sales are. And then you can talk to the guy about how much he's spending and how much he should put in advertising. So I never asked them. I used to sell the sales department. I'm never going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. I won't ask you to do that.
And I mean, that's remarkable. Were they pretty open to that, or did some of them resent you?
Yeah. No, they were great. And in the beginning, they were hesitant. They thought, how did this guy get this job so fast? Sure. And, he's from New York. And, right, that didn't help in Boston. I became a Red Sox fan overnight. I love them. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. The Patriots are like 0-16. Favorite team. And so I had to kind of come over some of the cultural issues to begin with. But I had gone to Holy Cross, so I did know the area somewhat.
Sure.
I had a good time there. I had a very good time there, but I had a good education. And I recognized that it was a learning experience for me and that I had to learn my craft and I had to prove myself every day. But more importantly, I had to prove myself to the men and women that I worked with. I had to show that I was worthy for their trust and make sure that I looked out for their families. And I always thought that it was important for us to find some community outreach that would be part of our whole package that we'd put together. So, and that would come more pronounced as I moved down in my career.
Yeah, and we will get there, but your philanthropy work is incredible. So early on, you had a strong desire. And obviously, we were speaking to Jeff a few minutes ago, about serving the community. That's always been, it sounds like, an important part of your ethos.
And it has been, because I feel that, I've been a very fortunate person in my life. And, I had a great opportunity. Yeah, I took a big risk. It could have blown up in my face and I would have been back, pricing chocolate bars.
But it sounds like, your father with the financial Wall Street background that he had.
He wanted me to go to Wall Street.
Yeah, but I'm sure you learned through him just by being around him. And then the background that you had at Nestle, I mean, what a phenomenal education there. And now you have this knack for opening the door and really helping clients out with not only a terrific media campaign, but how to make their store more efficient and utilizing the square footage more effectively. I mean, that's some impressive skill set and three really different skills, but to come together, I can see where that makes an incredibly powerful CEO. So from 78 to 83, you're the GSM of RKO General in Boston. At that point, they've got ROR. Do they have any other stations in Boston at that point?
They had WRKO.
Okay.
And WRKO then was a rock, AM was still, very viable media.
Sure.
And it was a top 40 station, very popular in Boston. They were migrating over to talk, and they brought on the Boston Celtics, and I helped them with the national sales of the Boston Celtics.
Oh, that's cool.
So I started to get an introduction to sports, with sports broadcasting, which was very fascinating.
And I mean, what more? The Celtics and the Lakers were two of the most exciting teams you could have had in that era.
I mean, watching Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, it was just, what can you say? It was living there through some great fun. It was a lot of fun.
I bet.
It was a lot of fun. And then in 83, the president of RKO called me and said to me, you're going to go to WOR in New York City. And I'm 29.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wow. And they offered me the director of sales of WOR Radio in New York City.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Not to toot my own horn, but it was something that I'd always listened to as a kid. And my mother listened to in New York all the time. And when I told her I was coming to New York to be at WOR, she finally accepted that I was in the radio business because I was going to be going to her radio station. So I thought that was pretty good.
That is so cool.
I thought I was making progress.
At that point, was your dad like, okay, I get why you chose this career path? Or was he still a little bit upset that you didn't?
He was very excited when I became the general sales manager of WROR. He was kind of like, you were right. And, and it was terrific. I mean, I think that even though he thought I was crazy, he knew that I had to go. He knew I had to go do it. He was very supportive after I left. He would kind of rub it in once in a while when I wasn't making any money, but I never asked him for a dime. I never asked him for anything. I wanted to go prove this and I wanted to go try it. Unfortunately, he died when he was 66.
Oh, so I'm sorry to hear that.
He died at a young age. So, but you know what? He was a great role model in my life. He was just a very smart guy. He was a very passionate guy, but he was very much a guy who believed in that you had a responsibility to give back from what you've been given and never take it for granted.
Sure.
And my dad was the banker for Cap Cities.
Wow. So he knew about media then.
Yeah, he was one of the first ones to really get into it. He financed the Cap Cities at that time. He also financed Kevin O'Grady's father, who used to be in the broadcasting business up in Middletown, New York, when they bought some radio stations. And then they would, so he was pretty well savvy in it, but he thought that it was a hard business to figure out how you got to different levels of management in it. And so when I started to move up into management of it, he was pretty impressed with that.
I'm
so
sure.
I think he was pretty happy.
GSM for WROR in New York City, at 29. And then
I was 29 years old.
Right in the middle of the 80s. What was that like, being in the city in the 80s?
Their offices were in Times Square, so that was a trip.
Oh, my gosh.
Talk radio then was, WOR was the talk in New York.
Sure.
I worked with the Gambling Family, Joan Hamburg, Bernie Meltzer, Joe Franklin, some of the real greats. And when you'd walk through and you'd read the history of it, that the first female newscast had been done here, the Fireside Chats with Roosevelt.
Wow.
And you just could feel this electricity, and, Ed Koch would be in there doing his show. And, one day I walked downstairs to the floor. The studios were on the 23rd floor. Our office was around the 24th floor. And there's Frank Sinatra sitting there.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm thinking,
man.
This is just
surreal.
It was to share a moment in radio history, and something that I will always treasure, and something that, those kind of radio stations are not around. But to be able to be a part of the fabric of that opportunity was just terrific. And there I worked with the sales team that was a lot older than I was. And, I had to prove to them that I knew what I was doing. Here I come from this rock and roll radio station in Boston, and I'm going to be at the Talk of New York, the WOR, this, 50,000 watt flamethrower.
Right.
Very prestigious, very well known. But had some revenue issues, needed some work.
So going from a music to talk station, there's definitely a different clientele. How did your sales approach? Was it similar, or did you have to change that to some degree?
I had to. WOR was a challenging station to sell because it was skewed older.
Right.
And a majority of our business came out of New Jersey.
Oh.
A lot of it came out of New Jersey, and a lot of it was retail driven. And so, the agency business was good, but it was never going to be anything that the retail business wasn't, because the direct response and that genre of talk radio is unbelievable. And I worked very closely with them. I developed a category system for them, not unlike the newspapers. And I said, this is the system that we're going to use. We're going to have an automotive category. We're going to have a furniture category. We're going to have specialists in these areas. And we're going to kind of work on these different sectors of the business that we know have the most influence on our audience. And, most of the salespeople are in their 50s and 60s.
Right.
And orders were written down on napkins. Traffic was just written on. It was pretty different. So I had to change those habits. But, I remember my first sales meeting with them. I said to them, you don't have to respect me because I have this job. You have to respect me because I know what I'm doing. And to that, I have to prove that to you. And I understand that. I understand you look at me as like your son. Well, I'm not. And, but just give me an opportunity and I'll prove you that I can do this, and I can help you make more money and make you a better account executive.
That's incredibly wise at such a young age. Were you reading business books, or was this from just kind of your experience, or a mentor? Who was kind of guiding you at this point?
Well, I kind of recognized at that point, I did read a lot. I did talk to Jeff. I had to talk to other people about what should I do. And then I just looked out and I just thought, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to try to gild the lily with these people or mislead them. I'm going to try to tell them the truth, because I said to them, I'll never lie to you. I just won't do that. If I can't tell you the truth, then what am I here for? So I was open with them, and that openness and that not being pretentious or not being, because I'm the general sales manager, you have to do X and X and X. I mean, I was tough, but also I was fair. And I recognized that I had to earn their respect more than they had in me.
I think that authenticity in what I got to experience when you and Jeff were speaking earlier is honestly in this day and age rare. And I think back in the 80s and the 90s was even rarer. So I am sure it was kind of like
nobody was doing that.
Yeah.
This was the era of the more people you fired, the better off you were.
Yeah, right.
I
heard a lot of those stories.
Oh, yeah. I watched a lot of that. I saw that movie. And I just thought, what I learned in my training at Nestle, and I learned from the way I always wanted to watch managers that I thought weren't doing a good job. And I'd take from them the negative things, and then I'd subtract the positive things. And I'd see what people did that they shouldn't do, or what didn't work. Or then after they left the meeting, the salespeople would huddle in a place and we'd all talk about the manager. So I thought, those are the things I'm not going to do. And I recognized that this was a challenging opportunity, but this could be a career. I thought that this could really be a stepping stone to something if I did it right. And I very much wanted to be successful in New York because I knew that New York was the Big Apple.
Did you feel that pressure? I mean, here you're in market number one. You've got to some degree, turn the station around, increase revenue. I mean,
oh yeah. Well, and also what you had is the presidents of the companies were in New York.
Oh, right.
And they were all getting together, and a lot of them had sales backgrounds. So if I didn't have Chase Bank on the air, I'd hear from Bob Williamson first thing Monday morning that he was at his golf club and we're playing with so-and-so, and why didn't I have this? And so I'd be like, I'd say to my wife, Kathy, on Sunday nights, I hope Williamson didn't play golf this week. I'm going to hear about it tomorrow. So,
you had all the bosses were checking the station. So
they all listened to it. And then I had the O'Neill family, which owned RKO General. They were there, and so it was a pretty interesting place to be.
Absolutely fascinating.
Oh, it was great. It was absolutely great, and it's one I will never forget. And I am very proud to say that I'm an alumnus at WROR.
So Greater Media, basically, and love for you to kind of explain to me a little bit how this all happened, but in 86, they reached out to you. At that point, they've got 21 stations. I might be getting this wrong, so my apologies, but Boston, Charlotte, Detroit, Philly, and in New Jersey. And they reach out to you, and what do they want you to do at this point?
Well, here's what happened. Herb McCord was a very close friend of mine, God rest his soul, just a great guy. And he called me one day. And I'm at, OR, and he said to me, listen, I want you to come down to New Brunswick and meet a guy by the name of Peter Bordis. And I thought, sure, why not? I'd love to meet him. I'd heard about him. I'd seen what he had done, and I saw him. He was buying all these stations, and he was pretty successful. And he was an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be involved in a business. I always believed that I should align myself with people who had the same goals in life that I did. And he definitely was an entrepreneur and invested in a lot of different things. Long and short, I get down and I meet Peter, and I lay out the WOR presentation and my background to him. And he said to me, well, we have an opening in Boston to run Magic, WMJX. And I said to him, that's a great opportunity, Mr. Bordis. And boy, I'd like that job. Just came out of my mouth. And I'm thinking, boy, what am I doing here? So the next thing I know, he said to me, well, you worked in Boston. I said I was at, RKO and so on and so forth. And he knew some of the people from WOR and some of the advertisers that I had worked with and some of the things that I had done. He was just fascinated with my background. And so the next day I get a call from him. And he said to me, I got an idea for you. How'd you like to go to Boston and run WMJX? And now I'm 32, 33. So I'm kind of, wow. So long and short of it, I said yes. And, everybody, my friends in New York, and everybody said to me, going to Boston, that's kind of a career stopper. You got a great job here at RKO and blah, blah, blah. And you should stay, and WOR is a great station, and you're in New York City, you're going to Boston, the backwoods. Well, Boston really wasn't the backwoods.
Sure, and you're going from being a director of sales to the GM.
To general manager.
Right.
Little did I know when I got to Boston, I talked to some of the people, friends of mine, it was called Tragic Magic. I was its name, Tragic Magic. I was losing $2.5 million a year. It was ranked 15th in the demo. The place was a nut house. And again, I've never been a general manager in my life. And this man just put this faith in me, and Herb McCord put this faith in me.
I mean, that's got to be, you're in a pressure cooker at this point.
Oh, I am. I didn't know how much of a pressure cooker until I P&L. And I went, holy Christmas. And I'll never forget a funny story. The next day, the book came out. I think it was the fall book. No, I went there in April. So I think it was the spring book comes, or one of the trends.
Right.
Or something came. They had a 2-4. And so Herb McCord calls me up and he said, well, you just read the book. You want to stick around for the movie?
That's a great line.
Which was a terrific line. And I'm thinking to myself, oh boy. He said, well, and I remember talking to Bordas right after that. And I said, Mr. Bordas, call me Peter. He said, I said, you're losing $2.5 million. He goes, no, I'm not. You are. And you better stop losing it. So I kind of figured that the movie was mine, and the book and the $2.5 million was mine. So I better start getting this fixed or straightened out.
So what did you do?
So I sat down with first of all, I went into the sales department, and we had to make some changes in there. But I talked to everybody, and I told them the same thing. They all asked me my credentials, and I said I had worked in Boston, and some of them knew me from my days at RKO. And I said, I've just come from WROR. They think you're a talk station. What does he know about music?
Right.
And I just talked about that, I have to earn your respect. The same thing I told the guys at OR, the men and women at OR. I said, you have to earn my respect. We've got a lot of work to do here. I told them the truth. I said, the radio station is known as Tragic Magic. We don't want to be Tragic Magic. We don't want to lose $2.5 million. And we can do better because we are better. And this is a great brand. This is a great signal. This has a great market, great city. And I want this station to be the fabric of Boston. And we're going to do it as a team. Now, that might sound very idealistic, and you might be saying, this guy's dreaming, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Some of the parts of that story, my ambitions are true. And do I know exactly what I'm doing? No. But I know I'm smart enough to figure out the questions I don't know the answers to, where to find those answers. And I'll find those answers. And I guarantee you, I will never ask anybody in this room to do anything that I won't do. I just ask you to give me a chance.
Incredible.
And if you give me a chance, I think we can go do something. And Magic became the #1 station, 25 to 54 in Boston, and won more Marconis and awards. And one of his advertising campaigns won an Emmy. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
What a remarkable story. I mean, to go from being called Tragic Magic, and you said it was 15th or 16th in the marketplace?
Oh, yeah, probably 15th or 16th. Losing $2.5 million.
How did you, so far, your career path trajectory, obviously, Nestle, your father in Wall Street, the sales side of the business, you become a GM. Now you are faced, I think for the first time, with a station that's got a challenge from a programming perspective.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. How did you adapt to that and really kind of get your arms wrapped around the programming part of the business?
Well, I understood research. I was a big believer in research and statistics and music testing and things like that because I'd seen it. I'd studied research. We would do things on Nestle Quick and chocolates, and I'd go to focus groups and I'd go to research studies and I'd look at it. And I learned very quickly that all businesses were consumer driven. And if I understood how the consumer used our product, instead of what I wanted them to think we use it as. It's very nice to put a slogan on the air because it sounds good. Sure. But I recognize that if it's not in people speak and it's not driven by the consumer, that this is never going to work. And so I took kind of the antithesis of what most people did and how we focused the opportunity. Yeah. And then I went and saw my dear friend Phil Rado, who was programming LTW in New York City. And I said to him, I got this great opportunity for you. And he said, what's that? I said, you want to go to Magic? He said, Boston? Are you crazy? Well, the long and short of that story is he came. He helped me, and then we got involved with we've hired some great research companies, and we really started to study the landscape of Boston media. And we kind of looked at where these positions that are here, where do we really fit in? And how are we not going to try to force it in? But where's the consumer need that's going to drive this radio station? And how do people use it? You know, we had a very successful show on the air called Bedtime Magic. How do people really use that? So we could market that back, and it had a halo effect on the radio station. And how do people use this during the day? How do people use this in the morning? Because it didn't have a foreground morning show. It didn't have any of that stuff. It had some good personalities, but we could find even better personalities for it. And once we figured out the usage of the radio station, then we went to work with Kurt Hahn at Filmhouse. And we worked with Bob Harper, who had worked with most of the Viacom AC radio stations in developing their strategic plans. And before we did anything, we developed a strategic plan for the radio station. And we developed a strategic plan for the organization itself. What do we want this radio station to look like in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? And how are we going to execute that? What do we want the creative department to look like, the finance department to look like, the sales department to look like? And how do we want to integrate that together so we build a cohesive group that everybody's vision is aligned in the same order? And there's nobody that's looking at it in different ways or things like that. We had to have everybody buy into the mission. And I made that presentation to them when we were finished with that work. I said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to lay this out for you. And if you don't like it, I begrudge you nothing. You don't have to stay and not do it. But I just want you to listen to it. And we outlined the plan. And we said, this is what it's going to take. This is what the revenue has to look like for us to make this work, to get rid of this $2.5 million that I had lost in a day. And we have to put all this together. It was all about great people, Chachi. It's all about great people.
Such an impressive, though, just blueprint. I mean, right there. I mean, that last couple minutes is like it's an MBA in radio programming and how to turn around a station. It's, I mean, really so wise beyond your years, and you can really see what Herb and the Bordas family saw in you to be able to outline something like that. I mean, at that age, and I was programming at that age, but I didn't have nearly the base of knowledge that you possessed. That's incredibly impressive, and it reminds me a lot of how, in a lot of ways, about how Jeff Bezos built Amazon, being so incredibly customer centric. What is it that the customer wants, as opposed to what so many times it's like what we think that they want versus really finding out what it is that they want.
Yeah, I would have consultants call me and come to see me, and I listened to everybody, and I had a mantra that I return anybody's phone call, because I recognized when I was trying to find a job, nobody would talk to me and how frustrating it was. And I recognized that I was no better than anybody else, and I should try to talk to people. And I realized another thing, that the consumer drove the business. Sure. We didn't drive it. And these consultants would come in and say, we play the greatest hits from the 60s or something like that. And I'd say, well, where do you get that from? Because do you know that CCO in Minneapolis did this, and this station here did this, and Coast in Los Angeles is doing this, and you should do what they do? Well, because, and nothing against Coast, it was a great radio station. Just because they did it doesn't mean it was right for Boston.
Right.
Because I wanted to see what those consumers said about that station. And I monitored that throughout the year, so I could understand when I had to change things, when not to change things. And that was very important to me. And then there was, then Phil got a great opportunity to go and run LIT in Chicago, which I was very happy for him. And I hired Don Kelly, who came in and programmed it. He did a fabulous job. But we worked on the same platform. I mean, we all had to buy into the same program, because it's what drives a business. And I always used to say to them, we got to realize this is a business. And if we look at it that way and don't get hung up in the grease paint, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Stay focused on our knitting. And we can't get outside of that. And we can't try to be something we're not. And we can't go against the grain of these call letters. That's what they mean.
Was there ever a moment where you were like, I'm scared. What if my game plan isn't the right game plan? Did you ever second guess yourself?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I used to go home at night and talk to myself.
You would call Jeff going,
I call Jeff all the time. Oh, I was always scared. Yeah, I mean, I'd go home at night thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this mess? And, and the loss, can I get it down? And can I turn this thing profitable? And I worried about all that stuff. I believed it, but I have this gut-wrenching passion and this belief, and I didn't think that I had all the answers. I thought I had all the questions, but I didn't know if I had all the answers. And I'd always go outside and try to find people that had more experience in a certain field than I did and talk to them. I would talk to the research companies. I would talk to the music companies, the people who did our music research, and I would talk to them about the quality of the sound. Smitty was our head of engineering. Was the fidelity right? Were we cutting through? Were we doing the right things? So I'd always challenge myself to make sure that I was right. And I'd ask other people to challenge me, to say, let's stress test this. Let's make sure this is right. Or do we have to adapt it? Or do we have to, you can't have things that are rigid. You have to be able to move. I think that somebody said a long time ago, running television stations is like running a battleship. They don't turn that easily. Running a radio station is like running speedboats.
That's a good analogy. I'm very impressed, obviously coming from the sales side, the business side of it, but your the acumen for programming, the interest in programming, because I think that in my experience, some sales sided parts of the business sometimes didn't have a lot of interest in that aspect of it. But it sounds like you were very engaged in the programming side and naturally curious as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people ask me why I spent so much time on it. And I'd say to them, because it's the product. I looked at it different. I looked at the radio station as the product. I looked at the people who ran it as the brand managers. And if I didn't understand what they were doing, or I didn't empower them to do what they had to do, and I believe that you give people the game plan and then get out of the way.
Yeah.
Give them the freedom and the breath to do what they have to do. And there's a part in life or in business where the art and the science have to part. And you've got to make sure that they can do what they have to do. And I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand more why we were doing what we were doing. And I had great respect for the programming side of the table. Yes, my inclination was with sales. So sales was easier for me. But I just thought, we're all in this together. And without a strong product, we're never going to get rid of the $2.5 million.
That may have also come a little bit from Nestle. That's a very product-driven company, and the understanding. Yeah,
it was a consumer good company.
Yeah,
I mean, I to this day, I will be very grateful for what I learned from those people at Nestle. It was an incredible experience, and probably something that helped me my career tenfold.
So Magic, you turn it around with the team, obviously, and tremendous success. And now you are promoted to the vice president of the radio group. So now you go from basically overseeing Magic in Boston to having 22 stations that you're overseeing?
Yes. Yeah. At that point, this is right before deregulation. So we had KLSX in Los Angeles, and we had WGAY and RC in Washington, and I helped with that for a while. And Peter also owned a cable division, and I worked in the cable division helping them with the sales for a while.
Wow.
Which was good. That was fascinating. It's fascinating to learn a little bit about the cable business. Peter was a pretty big cable operator. Plus, we had a community newspaper division.
And that was really kind of the Wild West of the cable business at that point, too, right?
He was in the Wild West.
Yeah.
Peter was a huge technology guy and loved technology, where he had redundancy up the redundancy. And I used to say to him, we buy any more backup towers and we're going to be backing up, Patton's Fifth Army. It was his dime. So I'd say, if you want to buy it, Peter, go ahead.
What was it like going from really having one baby to now you've got 20 plus stations around the country? How did you divide your time? How did you manage that? Did it make your life more stressful, or was it a little bit easier?
I have to say, in the beginning, it was hard to give up Magic.
Sure.
It was difficult. I mean, to say that it would be disingenuous not to tell you the truth. But I found that I got an opportunity to work with some really great people, developed some great brands, Riff in Detroit and WMMR in Philadelphia with John Fulham. We had great general managers, just great general managers. We recruited some really good people, Steve Cesare in Detroit and Tom Bender. And what we did is we went in and built brands. And we just took the same thing. This was going to be a consumer-driven company. First of all, it was going to be a people-driven company. The people were going to come first, and that was the strongest asset on our balance sheet. And then we were going to be, it was people, product, profits. And the Bordeses bought off on that because they were broadcasters. And that was very important. So I wanted to make sure we had the right people in the right places.
It's just absolutely, it's remarkable. In this day and age, you hear more about that. And I think there's more companies that are socially conscious. But back in that era, that was a completely different world. And to have that type of motto, I think was very unique. Where did that...
It was unique.
Where did that come from? Where did you learn about really putting people first as opposed to the mighty dollar?
I saw it in Nestle. I saw just in the way that, it was a different time. And I just thought that the more I looked at the horizon, I understood how to read financial statements like the back of my hand. I got all of that stuff. But I thought, we're really missing something here. Yeah. And then what did I started to see, especially when I got to Magic, when we started to put the right people in the right places, good things started to happen. And it became more and more apparent to me that people were more important than anything else I had. And if I didn't have great people, you never get it done. And I think that if you hire the best you can get in the beginning, it saves you from always having this turnover and this churn and this morale problems and just so many different things. It's just not
such a great point.
It's not the way to run a business. And I also made sure that, that the women in our company, that they were able to have, I always believed that they should be able to have careers and a family at the same time. I believed that it was a family-centric company and that I was always concerned about their families. And I would talk to them about that. I would talk to them about their insurance benefits. I remember going to Detroit every week when the crash hit. And people were getting laid off and their husbands were losing jobs and people were losing jobs and the business was awful out there. But I said to them, we're going to get out of this. I don't know how, but you got to believe that I've got to believe. And I'd have cookouts for them out there. I'd cook hamburgers and things like that. And I just wanted to sit down and talk to the men and women out there to make sure that they believed that we could get there. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. There was 47,000 streetlights out in the city of Detroit during the middle of this mess. But it was reaching out and recognizing that it was all about the people. And I didn't want them going to CBS. And I love Dan Mason. He's a terrific guy and a dear friend of mine. And I didn't want them going to work for Bob Pittman, whom is a dear friend of mine. I just didn't want those things to happen. Right. And I had to make sure that I built a culture that did that. I also wanted to give back, build a culture that served the community. I wanted them to learn how to do community service at the same time as we did the other things that we were doing, because we were successful at what we were doing, but we had to fulfill the whole thing. And, it was for the greater good.
Yeah. That helps the team understand that they're part of something bigger and something more important.
They had to realize that it was more than just about, I wanted them committed to their communities, committed to the station, but I wanted the station to be a local radio station. And the only way that it was going to be a local radio station is, first of all, to be live and local, but also be grounded in the community, not just superficially. But, like when Preston and Steve did their Camp Out for Hunger, and we filled 17 18-wheeler trucks with food, and it became the largest food campaign in the country. That was an amazing thing.
100%. And I think we sometimes forget as an industry how powerful we are from an activation standpoint and what we do for the community. And we lose perspective that we're helping people eat and putting roofs over people's heads and, things that we sometimes take for granted.
Correct. And a strong community is good for if you want to look at it this way, it's good for your economic benefit.
Yeah.
Because when communities are deteriorating and you're not going to help them try to do something, you have to be a good corporate citizen as well as being a good steward of your assets. And so I was a big believer in both. And that's why, we did days of giving, and everybody would volunteer at something, and different stations would do different things. But I always thought that was an important part of our whole ethos, and I think that the people there really liked it.
So your star continues to rise, and you go from vice president of the radio group to now you become the COO. So now you're literally in the C-suite. You're an officer.
Yeah, I'm in there.
You're an officer of the company. What does that feel like? That's got to be now somewhat surreal, I have to imagine.
Well, it was. I was there. I took over the newspaper company, which I didn't know a lot of. Yeah,
so
we had a
I didn't know
newspaper.
that. Oh my gosh! So you've got a cable division, a radio division, and a newspaper division.
Well, we just sold the cable division.
Okay.
So we were just gotten out of that, but we had a tower company. I oversaw the tower company. I oversaw the newspaper company and the radio.
Oh my God! And is your tower company leasing space to other stations and
other stations, other broadband and things like that? We did. It was great.
That's I could have a whole episode because that fascinates me too.
It was a fascinating business.
Yeah,
it was a fascinating business. Chachi, it's a fascinating business. But we did that. Then I worked closely with the Board's family, and I enjoyed that. I was president and chief operating officer. That was, I was meeting with bankers. I was making presentations to financial institutions. I felt comfortable in that world because I'd kind of come out of that world. But I also felt I had a good knowledge of what I was doing. I could talk well about our radio stations.
And how many employees do you have across these different divisions at this point?
I think at that point we're up to about 800 or 900 people.
So, you're running a large organization.
It was big.
Yeah, you've got to make sure you've got experts running the papers, the radio side, the tower side.
I had a publisher running that, and somebody at the towers, and then Milford Smithy was overseeing all the engineering stuff, and we had, what I did is try to recruit great managers.
Yeah. How would you go into, and obviously, my expertise is radio, but something, newspaper, that's adjacent to radio, but it's different in a lot of ways.
Different.
How would you go in and just kind of learn about that industry and, I guess become familiar with it? What was your approach,
I went to meet with the publisher my first day on the job as president. I flew down to see him in Jersey, and I spent the day with him. And I explained to him again. I gave him the same pitch. I said, "Listen, I don't know that much about the paper business, but I think together we can learn. I hope that I can share some of my experience with you. I don't mean to tell you everything about it because I don't know all about it, but I do know how to read numbers and I do know how to work with people. And I'm going to go to each one of your newspapers." I went to see him first. I said, "I'm going to go to each one of your newspapers. I'm going to meet the local people. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to have town halls. I'm going to address them. I'm going to find out what their needs are, what their problems are. I'm going to go to the printing place, and I'm going to meet the people who actually print the newspapers and sit down and meet them on the line and talk to them and find out what it's all about and understand what they do for a living and understand how their families live. And I just got to learn your business. And then I understood the commodity business because at Nestle's I would do the pricing of the cocoa beans and things like that to make the chocolate. And so I understood how that worked. So when I started looking at the commodity business, I saw what a metric ton of paper would cost and what our usage of it was. So that part of it, from the distribution standpoint and how we actually bought paper and what quantities we bought and how far we'd extend the contracts.
I didn't even know that. That makes perfect sense. But sure, the paper, that's changing.
I understood all that. So I said to him, when he said to me, "Well, you got to understand how the news, how the paper cycle works." I said, "Well, I think I got an idea of that." And I went through a whole different example of him. He said, "I think you got that part down." So I got that part down. And, I said, "I'm not going to get involved in the editorials. Those are up to the different towns to write their editorials and opinions." I said, "But I want it to stay at least rational. And I don't want to get inflammatory stuff. And I don't want to attack people. There's no reason to do that." We were not that they were, but I just said, these are some of the things I don't think we should do.
Right.
But I want us to be highly local. I want to make sure that we're covering the school boards and we're doing all the different things that we should be doing. And so our newspaper company, we had 13 of them, and we got up to making about 21 cents on a dollar in our heyday.
No kidding.
So that was fun. That was a good experience.
Yeah, what an amazing experience, and what's just a fascinating business. I've got a lot of respect for the newspaper business.
So do I.
And journalism as a whole. Yeah, especially now. Especially now. So, Peter, you had spoke earlier about magic, and it was really at that point in your career where you really started to get your arms around programming. You would really come from the sales side and the general manager side. Correct. And I always kind of felt or found in my career there were some GMs that really got programming and then others that just didn't have a whole lot of interest. They were very revenue driven. But it sounds like you really were someone that really got themselves into programming and had a respect. And you had mentioned that it was really art and science coming together.
I believe that, as I said earlier, that there's a point in any evolution of a brand where the art and the science have to separate. And it was that good fortune that, we were working on Philadelphia, and we had some problems with WMGK, which was a classic rock station at the time. And I remember I called Buzz Knight, who's probably one of the greatest strategists I've met in the radio business.
Bright mind.
Just a brilliant mind. And what I love so much about Buzz is he never said to me, why not? He said, why can't we do that? And he always challenged the hypotheses. And he really brought me into the fold of more research. He introduced me to a lot of great people. I met Fred Jacobs and Ted Rossetti. But Buzz was the catalyst for all of that. And so then I made him vice president of programming after the success in Philadelphia. And he oversaw all the stations. And he was kind of my strategic advisor. Before I was going to make, or anybody told me about a change that we should make, I asked Buzz to, chime in on it and give me his opinion. He always knew where the next step was going to be. He never dealt in the problem. He always dealt in the solution. And I always respected him about that. And I just grew to, he is a man of great integrity and honesty, but his strategic knowledge is second to none. And his ability to see where the puck is going to be was always something I admired. He helped with Riff, he helped with MMR, he helped with the country station, he helped make sure Magic was on track. He just, when we did the sports, when we hired Dave and Chuck, he was at the forefront of all these things that we were doing. And it was his hand on the tiller that I really counted on, because I needed a strong ballast to make sure that we were going to get through the things that we were doing. So it's very important that you empower somebody like that, but you have great faith in them.
The franchises that you two built together are really incredible, and they still are incredibly strong today. And that's not an easy feat. In a lot of ways, they're timeless. They've become, really ingrained into the communities and perform, even to this day, incredibly well. With Buzz, how often, when you were, COO at this point, how often are the two of you guys communicating? Was this like on a daily basis, weekly basis?
I probably talked to him every other day, or I'd talk to him when a week didn't go by that I didn't talk to him. I'd always check on him and say, how are we doing here? How are we doing here? Tell me the progress on this brand. What's going on here? I was reading the strategics and the music tests and things like that, and I'd ask him about different things that were going on. But I would defer to them in the end, because I recognized that there is a point where those lines have to separate, and you can't micromanage people, and you can't play what you want to play, or you can't do what you want to do. You have to be consumer driven. Where Buzz and I really related that we were customer focused, we were community based, but we came to win. And when you put those three elements together, I found a winner. And that winner was Buzz Knight. And to this day, we're still close friends. He's done a lot of great stuff. But I think the greatest attribute that Buzz and I can take from that whole experience is that a great brand should survive its architects. And if it doesn't, then I don't think you've done your job. And I do feel that those brands have survived their architects, and they've been handed off very nicely, and they're doing very well today. So to that extent, I'm very grateful. And I will always be very grateful to Buzz Knight for the camaraderie, from the intellectual stimulation, from the strategic knowledge that he gained, and opening my eyes to things that I probably never would have thought about before. So to that, I salute Buzz Knight.
He's a great man, and I would be remiss to not mention and plug his podcast called Taking a Walk. He's had some phenomenal guests, including Peter, Belinda Carlisle. He had John Loba. He's really spoken to some really fantastic executives and artists, and highly recommend Taking a Walk.
I strongly recommend Taking a Walk. I can't think of a more brilliant person to pioneer this field in the podcasting world than Buzz Knight. And he is doing extremely well with it. So for all your listeners, I beseech you, take a listen to it.
So you're the COO, and then, which gigantic job. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but then John Bordas passes away and you become the chairman and CEO.
CEO. Peter had died earlier of pancreatic cancer. Yeah, it was so sad.
Tough.
That was a tough one. That was a tough one.
And was he a mentor of yours, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. I loved him. He was great. He was so kind to me. I'll tell you one great Peter Bordas story, and I hope I'm not boring you.
No, not at all. This is fascinating.
So Bordas and I are out to dinner one night, and I've just become president of the company. I said to him, Peter, I got to ask you a question. Why did you hire me to run Magic? I mean, now Magic's very successful. It's doing well, making lots of money. And he said to me, oh, that's simple. He said, well, I thought you were a smart kid. And I always figured that if it didn't work out in 6 months, I'd just fire you. And you could always go back to be a sales manager because you're really good at that. So I said, you were young enough. I thought, what the hell? I'll take a shot.
Bounce back.
Yeah, you bounce back. I mean, it wouldn't be devastating on you.
That's great. I love that. How old was he when he passed away?
71.
Okay. Yeah, pancreatic cancer is tough.
And then his brother John was terrific. And I worked very closely with John. And John was terrific. John and I did a lot of deals together. We went through all the deregulation and putting different stations together. And long and short of it, I was in New York on business. I remember I called John that afternoon to talk to him about one of the deals we were working on. And he said to me, well, why don't you call me tomorrow? I'm going to be at a big boat down in Tiverton, Rhode Island. And he had to go have I'm not a boater, but a lot of work done on it or something. Call me at the boatyard and we'll continue this conversation. And he said, safe travels back. I said, take care of yourself. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I didn't think twice about it. It was just a normal call.
Sure.
So the next morning at 7 o'clock, I get a call from his wife. John was out jogging in the local high school track and just went over with a massive coronary and died. And I was crushed. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
Could only imagine. I mean, he's your business partner for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, he was. And Peter's wife, Lee, was still alive, Lee Bordas. And so she called me and we all got together. And the rumors started, Greater Media is going to be sold. It's all over, John Bordas dies. And so anyway, Lee said to me, there's only been one CEO of this company, chairman and CEO, and that was Peter Sr. And I'm going to make you chairman of the board and CEO. And you're going to run this company and you're going to run it through this difficult time with John's passing. And I have great faith that you'll get this done. And I said to her, I promise you I won't let you down. And that woman is she passed away just at Thanksgiving. She was a remarkable woman, very courageous, very brave. And she was getting offers all over the place to sell it. But she was a broadcaster and she wanted to be in the broadcasting business. And together we went on to do great stuff. And I attribute the Bordas family for their character, for their commitment to this industry, for their just faith in me. I mean, I put a FM talk station on the air. They went with that. We put the first country station on in Boston. Everybody told us we were out of our minds. It went to #1. We did so many sports in Philadelphia. We did so many different things. And all she'd say to me, do you believe this is the right thing to do? And I'd say, yes. And she'd say, then go do it. And never once did she ever, and they supported it 100%. I said, but I might lose some money in the beginning. She said, yes, but you'll make it up twofold. I said, yeah, I will. And I always did. And it was a great board. And it was just a great group of people. But they were all there for one reason. They believed in the mission. And we always believed that the people were the greatest asset of that company. And to this day, I would tell you that there's not a man or woman who didn't work for that company wasn't terrific. And those general managers were outstanding. They were just cream of the crop.
Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, an absolute tragic story that...
it's a tragic story. It's a tragic. And it was tough to manage a company through all that death.
That's what, I wanted to kind of get to. What did you do after John passes away? Sounds like this is a dramatic, but it actually kind of the image is when LBJ is taking the oath of office on Air Force One after John F. Kennedy was tragically assassinated. No one was expecting it. And all of a sudden now you are in charge of the company. What was the first thing you said to the team?
I first sent them out an email to everybody, and then I went and visited every radio station and every operation that we have. I went to. And I told them that this was a very challenging time. There's no doubt about it that we've lost a great patriarch and a great leader and one of my dear friends. But we're gonna muster on and we're gonna move forward. We're not selling the company. So whatever anybody tells you, I'm not here. I've never lied to you in the past. There's no reason why I'm going to start now. And we're going to commit ourselves to excellence. And the only thing that John would want us to do is carry on with dignity and respect and accomplishment. And to all of those above, we're going to do that. And I'm going to stand right here with you. And if any of you doubt what I'm saying, then ask me right here. And trust me that we're going to take care of John's memory, and we're going to dedicate a building to John, and we're going to go on and do what we have to do. And everybody was great. I mean, it took a lot of traveling, it took time, took a lot of outreach to different people and to make sure people, still believed in the mission and everything. And the Borders family was excellent. And it was hard, but it was a hard time. It was a hard transition. I missed him. I was going through my own grief at the same time.
Sure.
Missed the guy. I mean, his office was our offices are right next to each other.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I saw him every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's practically a marriage. It's your partner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Chachi, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. What year was that?
Probably in the mid-2000s. He died before the crash.
Before the crash. So you have this tragedy, and then
I had the crash.
The crash happens.
Yeah, and the crash.
We talked a bit about this and you calling Jeff during that era, but
and who was also a great supporter of mine was Jeff.
What did you do during that time with the crash? And you're trying to keep the company going, and obviously advertising dollars have been cut back dramatically, and you're now without your part. I'm assuming a couple years now into being CEO, but still relatively new.
I was a relatively young CEO.
Yeah,
and he was gone. And it was rough. I mean, during the crash, what I did is I wanted to make sure we tried to protect everybody's benefits, to make sure the Borders family Lee Borders believed that people should receive, if she's getting 75% of her health care paid for and 25% by the employees, then everybody should have the same thing. So we continue to provide the best health care we possibly could. We continued to keep a strong 401k program. And what I wanted to do is, first of all, make sure that the families and everything were okay and that people were secure in their jobs and that we could weather the storm. And that, we had to write down numbers. And writing down numbers is hard. Nobody wants to do that.
Sure.
And sure, everybody, we had to put some of the sellers on salaries because we figured eventually this was going to end.
Right.
I couldn't tell you when, but I knew it was going to end, and I didn't want to lose great people through that. I didn't want to borrow short against the long-term debt. I wanted to make sure that I thought of it's not the first step you take. That's easy. It's the reaction to those actions. Always think out here. Think of what the reaction is going to be. So you do something just to solve an immediate problem, but the real problem is 8 months down the road. So you've got to think about that. And I'd always look at things through that spectrum because I just didn't want to overreact to a situation. It was a lot of traveling. It was a lot of going to these radio stations and talking to people and listening to what their problems were and understanding that, meeting with clients, trying to help the clients out, work with them on the receivables, because people were not paying their bills like they were before. So we had to work on that. It was also talking to the banks about interest rates and covenants and things like that. I didn't run into any covenant problems, which was fortunate, like some of my other peers did. But we never leveraged it out either.
Yeah.
Didn't do it.
It sounds like you guys were incredibly responsible during the crazy years and didn't overextend the size. You didn't over-lever yourself. So you were responsible. And then you also really led with a consciousness during the bad times, and the fact that you kept 401ks going and benefits going and all these things that so many broadcasters cut is, incredibly kind. I would also, I think strategic is what you're saying as well, but also very kind-hearted, because most broadcasters, I was part of that. I was let go in 2009, and that was the more common route. You know what I mean? Was letting people go.
Yeah, but I always thought that, how would I like to be treated? I mean, you're going home at night, you're facing your family, you're facing your kids, you might be in the middle of tuitions, you might have a sick kid, you might have all these different things. I wanted them to go home and enjoy their nights, because if it was rocky at home, it was rocky on the job.
Sure.
And I didn't want that. I just didn't want to live like that. I mean, I had my own issues I had to deal with because I was running the whole thing. But I wanted to make sure that I could make as positive an impact on these people as possible, because that made the morale better, it made the productivity better, and it made for a better company.
There's a statistic, I'm going to probably mess this up, but the average CEO in Japan makes about 10 times more than the average employee, which I think is probably fair compensation based upon the risk, the stress, and everything that comes with the CEO. In the United States of America, it's 1,000 plus. So you see,
I think that's ridiculous.
I do too. And I think you start to have morale issues. I don't spite the CEOs for negotiating that. And I guess like a great athlete, they're able to get that kind of money. But I think the morale when you're cutting at some of these companies, that's happening now here in Hollywood, for instance, with a lot of these studios, but you've got CEOs that are making $50-60 million a year salaries. It's
absurd.
Yes, it is absurd. And
it's absurd.
Sounds like you guys were very ethical, rational. Everyone, was able to still have benefits and the things that have a roof over their head. And
right. I mean, we recognized that we wanted to be competitive, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't harming the people. We weren't taking away things that they needed to live. And we wanted to make sure that it was a company. If we were going to be a family company, and that was part of the signature line, a family-owned company, then we had to be a family company. If we were going to be a community-driven company, then we had to do that. If we were going to be a local company, then we had to do those things. So if that was the mission statement of the company, then it's easy to say those words. Words are simple. It's action.
Yeah.
It's like the old line is when people say, I wanted them to judge me on my intention and not my actions. Well, I want to be judged by my actions, not my intentions. My intentions are good. I'd love to be, Sister Mary Flowerpot, but I want to be judged on my actions. And that's what I think at the end of the day matters.
So in 2016, after this just remarkable career, literally starting as an AE, going to New York, become the director of sales for ROR, going to Greater Media and turning around Tragic Magic and becoming the vice president of the radio group, then the COO. You've got a newspaper, tower company, a cable company. I mean, all these just really exciting different divisions to oversee. And then, unfortunately, one of your dear friends and mentors passes away, and now you become the CEO and manage it through the recession, get through that. You get a call from the Beasley family. I don't know who called who, but you guys end up eventually finally selling Greater Media after all these years to the Beasleys. And walk me through that and how that happened from a business sense, but then also just from an emotional sense.
Well, emotionally, what happened was, yes, I did receive a call from Caroline Beasley. That is true. And she's a lovely lady. And what happened was that the Borders family at that point, there was a lot of estate planning that was going on. And there were a lot of other different things that they wanted to do. And I understood that. But we also started to see trends that we didn't see, that we weren't, the business wasn't growing the way we thought it should. The rate of returns weren't there, and we started to see the listening levels start to decline. And we started to look out ahead and said, what is this disruption really going to look like? And what is this digital model going to do to the traditional radio platform? Yes, there's a lot of digital strategies that we could have employed, and we did put together a digital group, and we were working on investing in that sector and building that out. But was it going to be as lucrative? If you look at streaming dollars and all these other different things, we're going to be able to make the same margins that we were making before. And were we going to be able to do what we still wanted to do with the company? And the Borders family had come to a decision, and I was in the room with them. I was pretty much involved in everything at family weddings and parties, and I did everything with them.
You were an honorary Borders.
I was an honorary Borders, and I had the name Peter, so I was a really honorary Borders. And I'd been with them for 30 years.
Unbelievable.
Which is long.
Yeah.
One company, really two companies, RKO and Greater Media. I think that the decision was made that maybe it was time for us to exit. It was a hard decision.
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you, Chachi, that it wasn't easy. It was not an easy decision on anybody's part. Everybody kind of tugged and hawed, but with the advice of a lot of people and sitting down and doing some hard, conversations. And, I had thought at one point maybe I would buy the company.
Really?
But I didn't want to. Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did think about that. And, I just didn't want to take on that kind of debt.
Sure.
Because I thought to myself, in this environment, with all the transitions that are going on, this is a very transformative time in the media space. It's a very transformative time in the economy. Is it going to be continued to grow? And can I grow my way out of this debt? Because I would have had to borrow the money to buy it.
Right.
The other Bordeses would have taken back stock from me. I could have worked something like that. But I just thought, the risks of that are just too high. They're just too high. And, I wanted to leave a legacy that I made a difference. And I made a difference in the communities that I worked in. And I made a difference in the lives of the people that I touched. And as hard as it was, Carolyn and I worked together on it. And we'd hired an investment banking firm. And we had Debevoise in New York represent us. And so we came to a deal with the Beasley family, which I think was hopefully beneficial to them and beneficial to us.
And I think there was an ethos, Matt, we were talking about ethos quite a bit, but I think there's a match, family-owned business.
We wanted to sell it to a family business. If we were going to sell it, we were going to sell it to a family business. We didn't, we looked at a lot of different strategics. We wanted to find a place where the culture that we had built. And, one thing that I always prided myself in, the great brands should survive their architects. And if you look at the greater media stations today, if you look at MMR in Philadelphia and Riff in Detroit and CSX and MGK and, Country in Boston and all that, they've done extremely well. Those brands were built on solid ground. And as long as they continue to, work with the people that we left them, I think they'll be fine. I think there's challenging times ahead for everybody, but sure. I think that they're smart enough to figure it out, and I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah. I think you left it and find they're great stewards of those properties. We work in full.
They are great stewards, and I wish them Godspeed. I wish them all the best. I wish Caroline all the best and the men and women there. I only have good things to say. But yes, it was difficult.
I'm sure you poured your heart and soul into that company for so many years, and it's what a remarkable career. It's been such an honor. I want to get into a little bit of what you're doing now, because the list of boards that you work for, or that you work with, and the philanthropy that you do is really incredible. I'm going to list that off. Are you still? Let me know if some of these are still current or not. But the RAB, are you still on the board of the RAB?
Yep.
Still on the RAB. Talk to me a little bit about RAB is terrific. I'm a huge fan of Erica, but talk to me a little bit about what you do, what the RAB does. I know most people that listen to this podcast already knows, but I think it's a great thing to talk about.
I'm not active on the board. I stay on the board. I think the RAB is a great organization. I was president of the RAB, And
That's
then I
right.
got drafted.
When Jeff made you do an extra year.
Yes, yeah. You can thank Jeff for that one. And I'm a big fan of Erica since she was at RKO when I was there.
Oh, that's no way.
Yes way.
That's wild. I interviewed Erica. This was probably 2 years ago now, but she told me about
She's
some
terrific.
of when she went to go some of her first sales jobs, and that's awesome.
Yeah, she ran. It used to be called 99X is my radio station. Erica ran it. Yeah, Erica did a great job. Erica did a great job. She's just a sweet lady and a good friend. And I think the RAB does a great job in providing a template for radio stations how to run their businesses more effectively. And with everything being cut back, I think the RAB plays a very, very important function. And I hope that broadcasters can really appreciate the work that Erica and her team do, because they do make a great contribution to the industry. So I'm a big supporter of theirs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You are also on the board of WBUR, the NPR station in Boston, which that's got to be a really neat board to serve on.
That's fun. That's a lot of fun because it gave me a different perspective of broadcasting from being on the commercial side to the non-commercial side. I have great respect for the men and women over there. Margaret Lowe is the CEO of the station. She does this magnificent job. And they're all very talented journalists and social conscious, and they just do a great job.
I'm a huge fan of NPR in general, and they've done an amazing job of evolving into podcasting. They're incredible.
Their digital role has been an example for a lot of other companies to use. When people say to me, well, what would you do in the digital world today? I said, I'd go work for NPR for about 6 months and learn what they do.
the Nestle of today.
The Nestle of today. I mean, these people really have got it down. And I think that a lot of the commercial broadcasters can learn a lot from them.
100 Club of Massachusetts. Tell me a little bit about that.
The 100 Club of Massachusetts was founded by Norman Knight about 60 years ago. And it's an organization that takes care of the fallen firefighters and cops in Massachusetts. So if a police officer or firefighter dies in the line of duty, we provide a benefit to the family, about $15,000, and we stay with that family through the rest of their lives. And we also do cancer deaths. Suicide is very high in the police. And I got involved with them when I was running Greater Media. Norman put me on the board, and I was a big believer in philanthropy, and I was a big believer in giving back to the community. And the cops and the firefighters were so underappreciated and so in need of this help. And, I've sat with a lot of widows, and you sit and talk to them and learn their stories and what they go through. I just thought that, the community work that I had done at Greater Media and the spirit of giving back and being grateful for what I had, that this was a community that really needed help. And I was elected president of it. It wasn't something I was seeking, but I got it anyway. And, I'm very involved in it. I think that, after having a media career like the one I had, I think that philanthropy is the next step, which you should do. I mean, I've been very fortunate, and yes, I miss the radio business. I do miss it. I can't go back into it, or Jeff will stick a spear in it.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I would. I'm very afraid of that.
You had said earlier, you really live as you say. It's your actions, not your words, and it's very impressive. And that sounds like a wonderful organization and something incredibly serious. I couldn't imagine losing a significant other or a parent in the line of duty. And obviously, God bless them for the tremendous work that they do, putting their lives out on the line so we can all be safer and live in the wonderful communities that we do. You're also on the board. I'm sure your dad is proud of this. He's looking down, but on the U.S. Trust, Bank of America Private Wealth Management. So you've got some banking. So I'm sure
I have some banking stripes. Yes.
Yeah. And then American Media.
American Media is a great opportunity. When I first left Greater Media, I ran it for I kind of ran it for a year, and I enjoyed it. It's a Jesuit-funded magazine that prints, and we built a digital podcasting company for it, and Trog Keller's running it now.
Okay, that's why. So when we were at Radio Inc., Trog was on, and I know Trog back from when he was at ESPN. We used to work together.
Right. I recruited Trog to run it.
That's
Trog
great.
Said to me one time, right after I sold Greater Media, he said to me, "Hey, listen, if you ever give up that America Media gig, let me know, because when I leave ESPN, I'd love to do it. I said, it's a great way to step out. So
that's awesome.
So when we were doing it, and I'm on Trog's executive committee and on his board. So
that's great. That's
great.
It's
a great board, and it's a great cause. And again, it's all about social justice. It's all about doing I went to a Jesuit school, so being able to help them and fund this thing and work with Trog has really been fun. It's been a lot of fun. Trog's done a hell of a job.
He's a good man. Big fan of Trog.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, I went to a Catholic Jesuit, University of San Diego. I'm Jewish, but the joke goes, my parents' best friends are Catholic, and they joke that the Jews are smart to go to Catholic universities, and the Catholics are very smart to go to Jewish hospitals.
That's excellent. I like that great deal, Chachi. That's great. You gotta remember that.
Peter, it has been such an honor to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. Your career.
Chachi, thank you so much for this time. This has been absolutely fabulous. It's something I've been looking forward to. I hope to see you in Los Angeles for a golf game with Jeff.
Please.
I hope to see you at the Radio Inc. conference or some conference in the future. But you have been very generous with your time with me today and very kind, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. Congrats on all your success. Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer, Darren Silva. Producer and editor, Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator, Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution, Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.